America is, if anything, a consumer-driven society. Every company caters obsessively to consumer wants and needs. Few do this better than TikTok. 2 billion global users and 170 million here in the United States. Today, the House of Representatives, by a gaudy bipartisan margin, passed a bill to ban TikTok if its Chinese parent company, ByteDance, doesn't divest itself from TikTok. Ban an app used by 170 million American consumers? How will that go over? Speaking of consumers, as of today, the major party nominees for the presidency are set. Joe Biden, born in 1942, Donald Trump, born in 1946. As you know, for months and months, large majorities in our country, consumers, if you will, have said the same thing over and over and over. Please, no rematch. We don't want a rematch. And yet, here it is. On Sunday, as you might recall, the Oscar for Best Picture went to Oppenheimer, a movie about the atomic age, a technological breakthrough roughly as old as Biden and Trump. Notably, around the time that Trump and Biden were toddlers, a rarity happened. A political movie won the Oscar for Best Picture. It was called All the King's Men. It's a story about a populist reformer who becomes a ruthless and corrupt authoritarian. Early in the movie, this budding politician at the center of the story gets some advice about how to win over voters. Quote, appeal to their emotions, make them laugh, make them cry, make them mad, even if they get mad at you. But for heaven's sake, don't try to improve their minds. Something to consider as we think about banning TikTok and commencing a general election. Caitlin Huey-Burns is here with me at the desk, and Nancy Cordes is on the road covering President Biden in Milwaukee. Caitlin, let me start with you. This has been an important week for former President Trump and the Republican National Committee. Why?
Well, now the Republican National Committee is essentially the Trump campaign. Trump's top picks to lead the RNC, including his daughter-in-law, Laura Trump, have been voted in by the RNC. And this week, the RNC laid off upwards of 60 staffers. And advisors have told me that this is part of the Trump campaign melding with the RNC. Now, there are huge structural infrastructure advantages for Trump to assume that, especially as Trump's campaign is facing a cash crunch, and so too is the RNC. I have been talking to Republicans, however, who are concerned about what this may mean for down ballot races, efforts to take over in state parties and the Senate and House members, too. If all of this is focused on Trump, what does that leave for these other candidates?
Now, you and I are both experienced with this. Presumptive nominees usually have a lot of sway over both national parties, Democratic National Committee, Republican National Committee. But this sounds something more intrusive, like getting people out, laying them off, replacing them, in theory, with Trumpists. That takes time, effort, and it makes the RNC much more focused on Trump and maybe potentially less focused elsewhere.
Exactly. And you're exactly right. I mean, as is the nominee's right to have in place leaders that they want. However, this is different because this has been billed as an extension of the campaign, one and the same with the campaign. That is how they're positioning it. They're not shy about that at all. And these layoffs that we've seen are part of that restructuring. But I think what's also important here is that we know that this is Trump's party. This is the official kind of realization of that. But there's also this concern within the RNC about money being raised for Trump's legal fees. And there's going to be an amendment coming up to vote on just that.
Nancy, I want to go to you in Milwaukee. I know you enjoy, as I did when I was at the White House, getting outside of the White House bubble, meeting voters. I understand you had a chance to talk to some in Milwaukee. Give us their perspective.
I did, Major. I was able to sit down with a trio of voters here in Milwaukee. One who is undecided. He is a 33-year-old barber here. He voted for Biden last time, and he's not sure what he's going to do this time around. One, a business owner who is all in for Biden. Another who is a project manager who's all in for Trump. And interestingly, they agreed on a number of issues. They were all leery about more spending on Ukraine and foreign aid. They all agreed that President Trump should stay away from any suggestion of a national ban on abortion, be it at 15 weeks or 16 weeks. And they all agreed that the economy was a huge issue for each of them. Take a listen to a little bit of what they had to say. when it comes to inflation, how much of it do you attribute to the after effects of the pandemic, and how much of it do you attribute to President Biden's policies?
It's been years now since the pandemic. I'm not buying that anymore. At first I did. I'm not buying that anymore because yogurt is still going up in price. I'm not buying that anymore.
How about you?
I'm still buying the pandemic because we're still getting the aftermath. It's just a lot of things still happening since the pandemic.
Interestingly, you know, we've asked voters time and time again about their feelings about the economy, and various polls show that they're not feeling that great about it, even as some economic indicators continue to improve. But here in Milwaukee, both that cafe owner I spoke to and a barber said that actually they are feeling the improving economy. Things are getting better for them, even as prices remain high, Major.
Nancy, did it come up in the conversation at all, any anxiety or even low-level concern about the physical or mental ability of either President Biden or former President Trump to handle the rigors of the job should they win in 2024 this year?
Yes, in fact, they basically told me that their concerns about both of these candidates kind of cancel each other out because they're worried about both of them. They're so close in age, 77 and 81. They worry about their physical health. They worry about their mental health. In fact, one of them made the point that that's why it's more important than ever that they give the vice presidential candidates a second look, because it's possible that one of them might have to move into the top job. And one of the voters I spoke to said that they wished that at his recent physical, President Biden would have gotten a cognitive test, even though his doctors said that they didn't think he needed one.
Kaylin, I want to bring that up with you. Do you think that is going to be, and have you experienced that in your conversation with voters, this idea that, yes, there are these general concerns, but also, therefore, a heightened focus on Kamala Harris and whomever former President Trump picks as his running mate?
Yeah, and this was a huge focus of Nikki Haley's campaign.
Right,
she explained that, in her view, she was running against Kamala Harris as much as she was running against Biden, and obviously she was running against Trump as well. You know, voters that I've been talking to at these political events, not at Trump events, because they are very much focused on the top of the ticket, and they believe that the vice president that he picks should be someone who is fully supportive of him. But there is this anxiety about that and what they actually are voting for.
Nancy, I want to ask you about Wisconsin, because this is a time for both campaigns to begin laying the groundwork on the ground. And as I understand it, the Biden campaign is doing that while the RNC is laying off people and trying to hire new ones.
Yes, President Biden, one of the things he's going to be doing while he's here in Wisconsin is opening up one of his main campaign offices. Democrats here in Wisconsin will argue to you that they don't necessarily need to be reorganized because they've been organized all along. There was this very animated race, you'll recall, for a member of the state Supreme Court. Abortion was at the heart of that race, and that kept particularly Democratic and progressive voters very, very engaged in politics here, and they remain so today. And this was such a close state, Major, as you know, in 2020. President Biden only won it by about 20,000 votes. And that's why the president, you're going to see him so many times back here in Wisconsin. He's going to Michigan tomorrow, part of this blue wall, this trifecta of states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, battleground states that'll be so critical to his reelection effort.
Kaylin, any timetable from either the Trump campaign or the RNC about trying to build out ground operations?
Well, they believe that they are going to start that now, that they're kind of one entity. But I think what we should point out is that there is a lot of work to do financially, especially. These are two cash-strapped operations. And also, when you look at results from last night in the primaries, in Georgia, for example, Republicans have been pointing out all day that Nikki Haley, who dropped out of the race a week ago, still did very well
13%,
in the suburbs of Atlanta in particular. And that had been, you know, what she was trying to say. And so Republicans are really concerned about that and need the infrastructure to be able to reach those voters.
Caitlin Huey-Burns here with me at the desk. Nancy Cordes on the road with President Biden in Milwaukee. Thank you so very much.